Hello, and welcome to another episode of South Bank Stories. Today, myself and Penny are lucky enough to be in the home of our president, the wonderful Ruth Dodds. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Ruth for being such a gracious host and allowing us into her home today. Very shortly, we'll be talking to Ruth about her life and drama, but first, I will hand you over to my brilliant and astute co-host, Penny Beggs.
Well, Ruth, it's a great pleasure to be allowed to talk to you today and to share in some of your memories of a long acting career. And I know you won't mind my mentioning that you are our most senior member with a lifetime of entertaining stories from a long history of involvement in drama. So, where to start? To begin at the very beginning, where did it all start for you? When did drama get into your blood?
Well, if I start at the very beginning, we just might be here all night. Because when I was very small, we had a lovely back garden. And my father was a genius at turning it into a playground. And my mother was always wanting to take a nice photograph. And my father would wait until I was absolutely caked in mud, messed with my hair and everything else in a mess, and then he would come out and take a photograph. And I was always either striking a pose or pulling a face or being funny. It was there, I'm afraid, very early. But I was a very shy child. I was a very shy girl, actually. And I wouldn't have had the courage to do anything about getting on a stage. And then we lived in Ballymena for 3 years, and the local dentist, or one of them, had 2 daughters. And their mother was very keen on verse speaking and elocution. And these 2 daughters were able to talk ever so nicely. And in Ballymena, that didn't sound quite right. And I said, I'd love to learn to verse speak. My father said, what? Talk like that over my dead body, he said. Well, I can understand how he felt. And then there was some show going on in the town hall. And I would have been in it if I'd been doing this verse that was going round. And it was something to do with a lamppost. I don't know what, don't ask me, but the word lamppost sticks in my mind. And again, my father said, that's the most awful rubbish. You don't... Well, I wasn't that bothered anyway, so I didn't do anything. And then we came to Belfast, the war started. Well, you didn't do anything except go to school, do your homework, and go back to bed and eat whatever scrambled dried eggs or whatever else you could get hold of.
So in fact, then really your actual acting career didn't start until you moved to Newcastle with your mother.
It's when I went to Newcastle, yes. And what started it was, I was lonely. I didn't know anybody. My father died when I was 17. And my mother really lost her bearings. She was only 50 at the time. And she took a notion she'd like to live in Newcastle. So she went down one day and bought a house. So that was that. And I managed to get a job in a little country school up above Annalong.
So there was drama going on in Newcastle in those days?
There was. And I went to see a play in Shimna Hall.
We remember Shimna Hall. We used to act there as well, didn't we?
What it was about, I do not know, but I do know that a Mrs. Manari, who was the wife of the Ulster Bank manager, I believe, was a very ebullient lady. And she did a very ebullient performance on the stage. I've no idea what the play was, what it was about. All I can remember is Mrs. Manari. And it came to me, I think I could do that. Really.
And you think you could do it better than Mrs. Manari, perhaps?
Sorry?
Perhaps you thought, I can do that better than Mrs. Manari.
No, I don't think I did. I thought I would just love to
Just
do
love
the
to
same
do it.
thing.
Right. Uh-huh.
So I told my mother this. Now, my mother was very good at poking about town, and there was a newsagent's shop in Newcastle, and called McNaughton's, and there was a very, very good assistant there called Lena. And Lena knew everything about everybody and everything in Newcastle. So if you wanted to know anything, you asked Lena. So my mother went in and asked Lena, and as it happened, in the shop at that moment was the secretary of the Dramatic Society, who happened to live just down the road from us. And the rest, you might say, is history.
It's history. So you joined Newcastle Amateur Dramatic
That's
Society. Right, okay. And can you remember some of the plays that you did once you got started?
The first one that I was in was The Sacred Flame. Now, it was the first, I did a one-act silly thing. I had to kiss the local dentist, and I was desperately embarrassed. Terribly embarrassed, and he thought it was hilarious. I didn't. I went, puce. Anyway, we'll let that go. But the play I was put into was The Sacred Flame, which was a Somerset Maugham play. Mm-hmm. And we had an excellent director. Excellent. We weren't a big company, but there was talent there. And our director was absolutely brilliant. And he put me in the part of a frustrated nurse who fell in love with her patient. And the patient was a cripple, and the patient's wife was doing a line at this time with the patient's brother. And the nurse was very, very, very angry about this. That was me. Well, I got the part, and I hit it so hard. I loved it. Look, it's the memory I have.
Right. Uh-huh.
The memory.
The very first one, yeah. Uh-huh. And I believe that it was there that you first met Stanley and Joyce Fitzgerald.
It was.
Yes.
Joyce was there. Mm-hmm. Joyce was in that play. She was the philandering wife.
Philandering wife.
The philandering wife. Yes. I have a photograph somewhere, and I could not find it, of the cast of that play, and Joyce is there. Mm-hmm. Stanley, I think, was in Armagh this time. He wasn't there anyway, but Stanley and Joyce were a couple. Mm-hmm. And woe betide anybody.
Yes.
I wouldn't have tried.
No, absolutely not.
But
I think I've seen a photograph of you and Stanley in the Chiltern Hundreds.
The Chiltern Hundreds, that's right.
Uh-huh.
Yes, yes.
And Stanley without the beard or anything. I mean,
that's
it's quite
right.
hard to recognise.
We were a conniving couple. We weren't just a walk-on part. We were a conniving couple in the play. Mm-hmm. It was good fun. It really was. And then that's where poor Stanley, by mistake, sat on a toast rack, which shouldn't have been where it was.
Sat on a toast rack?
And it had a pointed handle like this. And Stanley parked himself on it and brought the house down with laughter, for they thought it was all part of the play. And poor Stanley was suffering.
Yes, I can imagine. Uh-huh. It happens, those things happen, don't they, even in the best directed circles?
Oh, absolutely, these things happen. And he damaged a toast rack whose owner was not pleased.
Not pleased,
So
there you go.
It was good fun,
yeah.
Yes. The Chiltern Hundreds, and then we also in Newcastle, we went to Newry Festival. Mm-hmm. with Autumn Fire, which is the story of an older man who gets carried away by a young girl. I wasn't the young girl, I was her chum. But it was a good play. And we had an adjudicator, an Austrian woman called Gerda Redlich, who was very well known at the time. And I thought she was excellent. She really was. She said a lot of things that I thought, it was really, really thought-provoking. But it was a good play, and I wonder, have you ever heard of Patrick Carey of Mourne Grange in Newry?
No, can't say I have.
Well, Patrick Carey was a top-notch director. He was told by, what do you call my memory for names, a well-known name, you would know if you heard it, that he was good enough for the West End. Now, I went to 2 plays in Newcastle, I think it was the ex-Ritz Cinema, I'm not sure the Ritz, oh good grief. However, the first one was The Winslow Boy. This lady decided she could produce The Winslow Boy with all her company from the country, you know. Well, I was sitting beside Art, and our secretary. We were parked together, and this maid came on. There was a lad on the stage, and she came on, and she looked at him. She says, "Oh, Master Ronnie, is it you?" That was enough, thank you. I looked at her, and she looked at me. I mean, it was pathetic. What that woman thought she was doing, I don't know. But the next week, along came Patrick Carey's production of Housemaster, and he'd brought all the kids from the school into it. It was brilliant, brilliant. It was professional. Remember a youth who had glasses, a dormitory feast, and he had a banana in his hand. And he was centred on this banana. And back in came one of the masters, mortarboard and gown and everything, and stood behind him and let a sudden roar at him. Well, how that lad did this, I don't know. He must have practiced it half to death. That banana shot up into the wings, up above, without any evidence of any movement on his part. It just went, and the glasses slid.
It's like a
I never
circus
saw
trick.
anything more beautifully done. And that was what that whole play was like. So it was wonderful.
Yep.
So I did see things, and then Newcastle, we lost our good director. But I seemed to get an awful lot of Irish parts, the far off hills. My memory for names is very, very poor. But we did quite a few Irish plays. And then I think that must have been the last thing I was in before I went to London for a year. Taught in London. And then I got itchy feet again and went to Quebec.
Yes, I remember you telling me that you'd been in Quebec.
Yeah.
What took you there? Was that a teaching post? Or
It was a
Exchange
high
post.
school in Quebec, the Protestant English-speaking high school, the only one in the city.
Mm-hmm.
There were French. I mean, it was really very, not even French, Quebecois.
Mm-hmm.
They were a race apart in a way. I joined a drama group there. I can't remember how I got involved in it, but I did. And I went to some concerts there was a list of 6 concerts that were due to be performed that year in Quebec, early in the autumn. And there were some wonderful people, you know, Heifetz the violinist, the Vienna Boys Choir. We were getting some really classy artists. I went to the first three. I couldn't go again. I couldn't, because I never in all my life saw anything like the manners of that audience. It was unbelievable. They got up, they walked around, they talked in normal voices while the Vienna Boys Choir were singing, while Heifetz was playing, while the pianist was doing stuff. I couldn't go back, couldn't bear it. And then Stratford, Ontario players came. I was in the drama group by this time. Don't ask me how I got there, I couldn't tell you. But there was a fellow called Jack Rooney who took a bit of a shine to me just because I'd come from here. I know, with a name like Rooney, you can understand it. And Jack Rooney was a nice chap, but he was very keen for me to stay because he was going to do Juno and the Paycock if I did. And if I didn't, he wouldn't do it. Now, that sounds like I'm blowing my own trumpet, and I suppose I am, but it's true. But such was the life I had in that school that nothing would have persuaded me to stay. Nothing.
Right.
And I was in one show, and it wasn't a good company. There was this diva at the top who thought every nice, good part should go to her.
Yes,
and she wasn't half as good as she thought she was either. You do meet them. Yeah. You really do.
Having come back then to Northern Ireland, what took you to Belfast?
Well, I met a new member. No, this isn't nothing to do with who I married. It's nothing to do with him. But this new member, forgotten his Christian name, forgotten his surname too, come to think of it. But he had just come back from abroad and was joining our company. So I said to him, "Oh, where have you been?" Oh, he said, "I was in Windsor, Ontario." Mm-hmm. "Oh, were you?" I said, "I was in Windsor, Ontario at Easter." One of our staff, a very nice girl, her father was a Presbyterian minister in Windsor. And I went to Windsor for Easter, which was lovely, you know, a nice trip across. Oh, I said, "I was there at Easter." Oh, he says, what was the man's name? I said, "MacLeod." And he looked at me. "That's the church I went to." I said, "Did you?" "Yeah." "Were you there on Easter Sunday evening?" "I was." Well, I said, "So was I." And here we are in Newcastle, County Down, in the same play, playing opposite each other.
It's an amazing coincidence, wasn't it? Absolutely.
Well, I must say, I never came across the like of it, you know, but it was. There was a long drawn out thing I did first, and you know, I've forgotten everything about it. All I remember is that there was a massive, massive number of lines. It was a huge. I never seemed to stop talking, and I don't think it was worth talking. I wasn't impressed with the thing, and I felt a bit, oh dear, you know. This is what. However, the next thing was "And So to Bed." The fun.
That was the one about Samuel Pepys.
Samuel Pepys, and I was Mrs. Pepys, a very volatile French woman who was always watching for him to be on the lookout for a lady friend. And the wife knew it, and it was great fun. I stepped on my first line. I'll tell you why I've never forgotten it. "Oh, we have company," So it seems. Well, that was the opening line, because I walked on and there were the lady friends billing and cooing round my husband. So I just said my piece, and I was stopped and made to do it again, and made to do it again. And our director had absolutely no sense of humour, none whatsoever. And she made everybody do their first entrance about 1,000,000 times. And by the time I'd finished doing it, I hated it.
Oh, that's a
You
shame,
know,
yes,
it was... she
you
was...
you don't want to spoil
It spoiled it.
people's pleasure in what
And
they're doing, do
everybody
you? You do
else
it for
spoiled
fun,
it.
as they
I
say.
also blotted my copybook because Conor O'Cleary, who was Conor was very good. He was the Irish Times correspondent for the New York Times. He was the Irish correspondent for a very capable fella, several years younger than me, but I mean, I was a bit of an idiot. And I can remember the two of us having a fit of giggles. And our director wasn't pleased. She was not pleased. And the less pleased she was, the more we giggled. You know how it works.
Yes.
It just went on. And Conor and I were helpless. I don't think I struck the right note with her somehow. However, then I went to Castlewell. Now I'll tell you this wee story, if it's okay by you. I produced 2 plays in Castlewell in secondary school before I left. One of them was a version of Christmas Carol. And I got the thing cast, but I could not find a Scrooge because it needed to be somebody reasonably good. And then I had a brainwave. There was a very shy boy in one of the classes who loved following what was going on, stayed in a corner and sort of hid himself for fear he'd be seen when we did Snow White the year before. And I thought, I'll try him. Miracle. He was brilliant. And I think of that as just a crowning moment of my career as there's ever been about anything.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. And have you done any more directing since school
No,
plays?
I worked with children, comfortably,
Yeah.
but I was scared of adults.
Well, it sounds as if that was a great success anyway. You must have changed that boy's life, I would think.
Well, I know the local minister who came in, he says, "What have you done to that boy? He used to hide from everybody and now he's taking charge." I said, good, that's what I want to see. He has it in him.
That's what acting does for you, isn't it? As you said earlier, you're a different person once you're on stage. You may be shy, but...
the crowning moment of my dramatic career.
Oh, that's lovely. That's a lovely memory, absolutely.
Very, very pleased with that. So then I got married and we did the auction in Killybuck.
That was what I wanted to ask you about.
The auction in Killybuck hit the right note at the time. Mm-hmm. The situation we were in then, it poked fun at it. Mm-hmm. The aunt was terrified of a Hibernian, the wrong sort.
Oh, yes.
Buying some land
Nothing
of
changes.
hers. Yeah. And she wasn't too keen on this girl that her nephew was keen on. So she was a bit of a stickler. And it was a bit difficult. They had to get together to find ways and means of getting past her. Oh, no, the aunt was not to be moved. And then there was an excuse me, there was an auction for this land, and they rigged this up, and they brought this fellow, a Hibernian. Actually, he was a police inspector, this chap. And the funny thing is, I know maybe I shouldn't mention this, but he was the only Catholic in the cast, as chance had it. But he was a police inspector, and he walked on, and he had the most massive green tie. I mean, his wife found it somewhere, and brilliant. And this was hit you right in the face, this tie did. And the aunt had to sit there and look in total horror. Maybe it's for another, he wants it. This kind of thing. Anyway, that went down a treat. Well, we did it everywhere.
This was with Dunmurry players?
This was Dunmurry.
Right.
Now, Dunmurry were Sam Creve people. Mm-hmm. And I was getting a bit fed up with the Ballymena accent. A battle axe with a Ballymena accent was my part. I was typecast. And, well, you get a bit fed up with pretending you're a battle axe from Ballymena. And I met Joyce by chance, and I hadn't seen her for years. And it was around Dunmurry somewhere, or Finicky, I'm not sure. And I told her I was, I'd had just about enough of this stuff. And I told her I was looking around. So she said, come to us. We'd be delighted to have you.
And at that time, she was in the Osborne Players?
And Joyce brought me, and I think the first thing, it was Neville Harris was in it. Nevin Harris. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Michelle that directed it.
My impression was that the first play you were in was the incredibly named The Farndale Avenue Housing Estate Times Women's Guild Dramatic Society Murder Mystery.
Yes.
Which is called A Comic Disaster by David McGillivray and Walter Zerlin Jr.
I loved that.
And you were apparently Mrs. Reese.
I was everything.
And Mrs. Reese, we're told, on the back of the programme it says, these ladies who are putting on a play, led by their redoubtable chairman, Mrs. Reese.
That's right.
That was you, right. So you do well at being redoubtable.
Oh, I loved that. It was an auction, I think. It was a quiz. And it was a fashion show. And of course, Mrs. Reese ran the whole thing. And Mrs. Reese, I don't know, I didn't even notice. But apparently on one performance, skipped about 3 or 4 pages and went on from the wrong point. But it was the nature of that thing. It didn't really matter.
I remember that because I think I was prompting.
Were you?
I think.
Oh,
but
bless you. I'd rather you than me, dear.
It was such a crazy play within a play, as you say. And it was the art of course acting, really, wasn't it? So you really wouldn't have noticed if there was a bit missing out of the middle.
Oh, it was all the characters. What was it? The French maid. I think I died 3 times.
Well, it was a good introduction to the company, certainly, but I've never seen such a long title.
It was great fun. I mean, we did that in Enniskillen, of course. Mm-hmm. That was the Ardone. And then a lot of, the last thing I did, apart from the cream cracker, I was a reading, was Mrs., what was her name?
Tancred. Mrs. Tancred.
Tancred.
Yeah.
Yes. And I just walked on for about 2 minutes and off again.
It was a very important part, though.
But it was important. And
the interesting thing was we did Juno and the Paycock twice.
Yes.
And your predecessor playing Mrs. Tancred the first time was Joyce Fitzgerald.
Really?
Yeah, that's right. And interestingly as well, I was thinking that shortly after the Farndale episode, you were in The Real Inspector Hound. You were the lugubrious Mrs. Drudge.
Oh, yes,
Remember
yes.
Mrs. Drudge?
Muldoon Manor.
Muldoon Manor, and all about the mists rising out of
That's
the
right.
swamp and all those things.
That's right.
And we did that twice. And the first time, the person who played that part was Molly Glover,
yes,
who
yes.
was your predecessor as president of
That's
the company.
right. Yes,
Isn't that
yes.
interesting?
Molly came to my mind too.
Yes,
I know.
yeah,
Oh,
that was interesting.
well, I do appreciate so much having been a member of South Bank and giving me the honour of president. Really, I don't deserve that, you know. Well,
We are
I
privileged.
was overcome. I was overcome by that, and such a friendly place. None of this inner circle stuff which I saw before, and I saw it in Dunmurray very much so. It makes such a difference, and the O'Hare boys and the fun and the laughter and the time. I remember it was at Frank Crummy and Sean O'Hare, but they got into a dialogue and they reached a certain point and they broke down laughing.
Which play was this?
Inishman. Oh,
Oh,
this
The
was a
Cripple of Inishman,
rehearsal.
right,
This was a
okay.
rehearsal,
Yes,
mercifully
yeah,
enough.
yeah. So yes, I'm glad we're going to talk
And
about
then
The Cripple of
they went
Inishman.
back, and Eugene said, right, do it again. Same thing happened again. Come on, do it again. By this time, everybody in the hall was laughing.
Well, The Cripple of Inishman was such a very funny play. I remember you saying to me that of the two plays that you spent most of the time in bed, being an invalid, there was The Cripple of Inishman and there was Lovers, Winners.
Lovers.
And you said to me that you really disliked the character you were playing in Lovers, but you really liked Mammy in The Cripple of Inishman.
Well,
and she was such a profane whiskey-drinking old lady. The language was dreadful, Ruth.
I'll tell you what the difference. In the old poteen drinker didn't pretend to be anything but who she was. But the Lover's character was blasphemous. She was using the name of God's name, the name of Christ and the name of God for her own selfish, totally selfish purposes.
Yeah, that's right.
That is
Yes.
I mean, if she'd been a bad lot and just said she was a bad lot,
Yeah.
I could have put up with her.
Yeah, she was a terrible old hypocrite because she was busy really ruining her daughter's life, wasn't she?
She was-
Deliberately.
She was talk about a control freak. She was a massive example of that, and she ruined everybody around her. I'll tell you, that sort of person does such damage. Well, I have a bit of experience of someone like that. Not my own family, thank God, but I've seen it. And it stuck.
Certainly, I mean, I directed that play, one of the few plays I directed,
Yes.
Winners, and I was aware, I think, that you found it hard because you really didn't like the character, and I understood that because, as you say, she was one of the most unpleasant characters I can ever remember in plays. Horrible woman.
She was a thoroughly evil woman.
She was.
And I would say evil.
Yeah.
That to me is evil.
Yeah. But The Cripple of Inishman was great fun, I must say.
It was very clever, Penny.
And
very clever.
Sean played Johnny Patine Mike. Do you remember your mammy's son, who was busy filling her up with whiskey all the time, in the hope we thought perhaps that it might kill her?
I remember I had a bottle, and I missed a chance. Oh, I missed a glorious chance. I've kicked myself ever since. Sean was sitting there, and of course it was very warm, and the hands were sweating and everything. And I got this bottle, and I couldn't open it. I was struggling with it. I don't remember what happened in the end, but I missed the chance to give him a dig in the ribs, hand him the bottle, and tell him to open it.
Yes, absolutely.
I didn't do it, and it did cross my mind, and I hadn't the nerve, and I've regretted it ever since.
No, it was great fun. And then, of course, also quite early on in your career with with South Bank, because this was, as we've been saying recently, the first major South Bank production, Inherit the Wind, and we've all watched the film of it recently, haven't we? And what are your memories of Inherit the Wind?
Inherit the Wind. Well, it's a very good play. And what I remember about it really is I feel sad for those people who had the wrong ideas about, well, I'm a Christian, as I've said. And I think the crime was to teach them the way they were being taught. To fear. Hell's fire. Well, I'm not arguing about the importance of listening, to the message. But I do hate this holier than thou stuff.
Well, I mean, yes, I mean, the fervour of some of the people in Inherit the Wind was, as you say, frightening. But we had some tremendous performances, didn't we? I mean,
The
Stanley
performances-
and Sean, and indeed yourself.
It's a very good play in itself too. But to see Sean, he hasn't changed a bit. He just doesn't. Those two fellas never look a day older. I don't know how they do it.
They'll be delighted to hear you saying that on.
Well, he's full of fun.
Yeah.
He's full of fun, and he's right. He's right. Yes, it was lovely to see that, and Philip expounding, yes, and Philip's another very stalwart,
Yes,
a real
absolutely.
stalwart,
Yeah.
isn't he? Oh, they're a great group.
So I mean, I was having a look at the number of plays that you were in over that period from the foundation of South Bank until, as you mentioned earlier, your very last appearance as in Cream Cracker Under the Settee.
Oh, the cream cracker.
And that was part of South Bank Shorts, wasn't it? A reading, and for most of which you were actually sitting and lying on the floor.
Yeah.
And Stephen, who was directing it, said he was a bit concerned at the beginning, and you said, "Oh no, that's fine. I can sit on the floor, and as long as somebody helps me up, that's fine." It was brilliant.
If there's nobody to pick me up, that's another matter. But I don't mind being on the floor. Not a bit. No. I don't mind at all. And I don't mind, the good fun, don't drink the water. And the plaster I put on my face, if you remember.
Don't drink the water. I think you were in a wheelchair in that one, were you? No, that was Night Must Fall. Don't drink the water. You were a kind of Miss Marple figure, isn't that right?
No, I think I just was the Countess Wilhelmina Bordoni.
Oh, right.
And so I think it was Don't Drink the Water. I get mixed up.
Was it Murdered to Death that you were Miss Marple? Yes, it was Murdered to Death. Joan Maple.
Yes, Joan Maple.
That's right.
I liked that. That was good fun.
Photograph of you sitting.
That was good
Stanley
fun.
being the butler and offering you a drink, looking very much like Joan Hickson. That was great. So you've had a wide range of involvement, Ruth, and we are privileged to have you as our president. And thank you so much for talking to us and sharing all those memories. It's very much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for all the fun and the pleasure and the good companionship I have had with South Bank. Thank
That's
you
a lovely
very
note
much.
to end on. Thank
all
you,
of you.
Ruth.
Once again, I'd like to thank Ruth for her time and allowing us to capture some of her memories today. If you like what we do, please feel free to comment, like, and share our programmes. We hope to be back soon with another episode for your enjoyment. From Penny and myself, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed our show as much as we enjoyed making it. Goodbye.